Hello everyone, welcome to the course Disability Studies in India, Historical, Social and Culture Perspectives. So in this week, like this module which is titled as Indian Myth, Stereotypes, Language and Representation, we are talking about myths, stereotypes, language and representation. So obviously we'll all talk about it, but right now I'm talking about in this lecture is reinterpreting Indian myths through the lens of disability. Now you remember, in the previous lecture, when I was giving a conclusion, I asked you, I suggested you, okay, why should we examine, why should we look at Indian myths? Why should we reinterpret Indian myths? All right. So let me give you an example. All right. Then you will understand, and I'm sure that I also said that I will be telling you a story, so I'm just telling you the story, and with that I will explain why we are talking about reinterpreting Indian myths. All right. Okay, so the story goes like this, and then I'll talk about it. The relevance, the significance, and the examples. So there was a time, I'm sure that you must have heard the story, but if you have not heard, just listen to this story again. So there was a time when King Dasrath was roaming around and he was hunting, right? As you know, the passion of a king is to hunt, right? So he was in the jungle roaming and hunting, and then he suspected that there is a deer somewhere, and he just bowed his arrow and killed. And then he heard a voice coming from that place, not of an animal, but of a man and women. He went over there and he found that he has killed a person, right? And then the person's name was Shravan Kumar, right? Shravan Kumar was the person. And he was there to fetch the water for his parents. So he suspected, like king suspected, that it's a deer who is drinking the water. So he just thought of killing, and obviously he didn't notice it, because these people used to be, as the story goes, like, you know, they can kill the person just by listening the sound where it is coming from, right? They don't have to see, like I'm sure that you must have heard the name of the Arjun. In fact, there are a lot of people who talk about the myth. I'm not sure because I have not seen, so I cannot tell this. Like Prithviraj Chauhan, like he was also skilled in such a way that he doesn't need to see a person to kill. He can just listen the sound and can kill a person, where the sound is coming from, right? Okay, so coming back to the story, and then when he got to know that he has killed a person, obviously he felt really bad and he started repenting the kind of a crime he has done. And then he went, he obviously at that point of time he was not died, but he was about to die, Shravan Kumar. Then Shravan Kumar told that this is the fridge of a water, my parents are thirsty, and please take this water to them. At least take this water to them and convey my regards, so on and so forth. And that's what King Dasrath went over there, where the parents were waiting for his beloved son to come. And then he stood folded hands and he said that, I'm so sorry for the crime which I committed. Unfortunately, I killed your son. I didn't know that it is it's your son, but I thought it is an animal which is drinking the water. Obviously, after listening the news, the only person who was taking care of Shravan Kumar's father and mother, they felt very bad, right? They got exhausted, like they grieved, they disheartened, obviously. They started mourning, and because they both were blinds, right? And King Dasrath said, I will help you, I will take care of you, whatever you say. I'm so sorry, I cannot take this back, but whatever you say, I will be happy to do this for you. But obviously, nothing can recompensate the life of a person. And then King started, obviously, he was feeling bad, and then he was punished by giving, he was punished for the act he did, and he was cursed that you will also die as I am going to die by grieving the longing for your father, for your son. So, the pain that I am experiencing because my son has died and he has left me, you will also die by feeling this pain that your son has left you. And so there is a connection of the story that this is the curse which King Dasarath experienced after a couple of decades when Ram went to the jungle, right? So this is the story I wanted to tell you. But why I was telling you this story? This is the point. Why I was narrating this story? This story is not just because I wanted to narrate the story, but I wanted to tell you why do we need to reinterpret the myth. Look at from the disability point of view now. So imagine, look at from the disability point of view, there is a Shravan Kumar's father and mother, they were blind, right? So socially, culturally, you can call them disabled, all right? Physically impaired, dependent. So, and who was cursed? King Dasarath. Who is a King Dasarath? He is a king of a kingdom where everyone is standing with folded hands before him. So, as a king, standing before two blind people, folding his hands. Look at the role. So, is it about disability? Because these two people are disabled. If it is about disability, then he will say, oh, I don't care about these blind people, throw them out. I'll kill these two people as well. I killed one person, I will kill these people as well. No. Because the society, the consciousness is not based on the power, arrogance of the power, but it's more about humility, humanness, sympathy, empathy, love, emotions, care, concern. These were things which were guiding people at that point of time. There are many examples I can give you right now as from the myth, where you will see people are being respected for this. For example, King Dhritarashtra. Let me interpret another myth for you. King Dhritarashtra, he was a blind, but he was also became a king. Imagine a blind person becoming a king. People say that since he was a blind, he was not allowed to become a king. No, he was not capable, not because of his blindness. But later on he became a king. If that is the case, why should he become again king? There are a number of people waiting to become a king in the kingdom of Hastinapur. But he becomes a king, people follow him, people listen to him. Right? So, see, what I'm trying to tell you here is that, you can reinterpret the myth the way you want, with the different context, with the different understanding and all that. The last lecture when I ended the lecture with an idea that we need to reinterpret these myths. We need to reinterpret these myths so that we can define disability with the lens of human dignity. We need to redefine the notion of human dignity. We need to redefine concept of human rights. We need to redefine these things. And they are only possible. They are only possible if we read them in the context. So, if you go to the Greek society also I am talking about, if you go back to the any ancient societies, disability people were, I am not talking again, I am saying that it is not like they were not treated badly, but I am sure that they were very much part of the society. Alright. So, let us look at the slide number 1 then, so that we can have more clarity on this. Disability, in the lens of disability, Indian myths form a crucial part of the cultural heritage and collective consciousness of Indian societies. These stories from the Mahabharata to local folk tales convey ethical, spiritual, social lessons that have cultural, local convey ethical, spiritual, that have shaped cultural values for centuries. In traditional Indian mythologies, disability is often symbolic, with characters who are blind, deformed, mentally challenged, serving specific narrative or moral functions. These portrayals have influenced how disability is perceived and treated within society. The reinterpretation of this myth is vital in modern times as society shifts towards more inclusive understanding of disability. So, this we are going to explore the need for reinterpreting disability in Indian myth to foster a more progressive, empowering narrative that aligns with contemporary views on rights. Right? So, these are the myths which serve as a moral or symbolic device. They are not about independent characteristics, right? We are not talking about Ram, Dasarath, Shravan Kumar, so on and so forth, just to talk about that. These are the individual characteristics, but rather we are talking about them with the idea, right, with the notion that it's a way our morality should be. They are used as a symbol which guide us, right? So, which guide us to tell, right? So, like Dhritarashtra blindness should not be treated as a, like his blindness is more about, as I have already spoken about it, it's the inability to see the injustice done in our society. I mean, again, as I said, that that's a really bad looking at body as a metaphor, right? Like the Sakuni's limp, right? Sakuni's limp is associated with a vengeful nature. Again, limp is again associated with the body, right? And that's a really, I mean, this is a different way. When I'll analyze it, I'll talk about it. But this is showing how physical deformities are often intertwined with negative characteristics. So that's a one way to look at that, how body cultural studies scholar talk about that body speaks. There are body which meaning are assigned to these bodies, right? A body has a different meaning attached on the body, a difference look, how do you do that? But what my point is that how they are looked as a negative characteristics, right? They depict disability as a result of past action. That's also, we need to see that, or divine will, right? So, let's say for example, if you have a, if you are born in India as a disabled or impaired, right? So, maybe that is the idea that what it is also understood that it is the criteria to treat you either as a excluding it and also including it, but making you feel as if you are something else, you are different, right? So, depends which sides we take. In fact, when I was talking about, you remember historicizing disability? When I was talking about historicizing disability, I was giving you multiple examples. Obviously, I was not talking about myths, but Shah Daula's one example that I picked up from Silpa Anand's article, that there are different ways where people with disabilities are accepted in the societies. They are treated with proper care and concern. Whether they are properly included or not, that's not the point, but that's also problematic to say that they were excluded in the societies, right? This is an important thing. I'm trying to tell you that this is what we need to keep in the mind when we are reading this. Look at the next slide, please. So, characters are often cursed to become disabled. The narrative emphasizes the idea that disabilities are karmic consequence of past life. This perspective perpetuates stigma by suggesting that disability is a form of moral deficiency, right? Disability is a form of moral deficiency. This is what we need to question, right? Okay, how come disability is connected with moral deficiency? We'll talk about it, right? So, such portrayals have a significant impact often reinforcing stereotypes and discouraging a compassionate view of disability in society. So, the association of disability with negative traits or comic retribution has contributed to stigmatization. People with disability may face societal exclusion due to deeply ingrained cultural belief that frame disability as a moral or spiritual flaw. So, as I already talked about Ashtavakra, as a wise sage born with physical deformities are revered, but this reverence is often framed. This is what I was trying to analyze in the previous lecture, right? Is often framed as admirations for someone who has overcome their limitations, which can be both empowering and limiting, right? So, the point, the one problem that we see is that when disability is considered as a form of a moral deficiency, why is it so? In fact, when I was talking about monstrosity, you remember there was a lecture I talked about monstrosity and all that. So, you see that moral deficiency has nothing to do with disability, but generally, let me give you an example, then you will understand. Okay, let me give you an example from a text. So, we have a text called Oliver Twist, right? And what happens in the novel? Oliver goes to a city, London, and obviously there are people living there, and obviously London was always a place for prosperity and also for poverty, right? Both. Any city, if you see, city simultaneously, those paradox you can see, both things are available. So, there are at that point of time it was economically booming, but also they were pickpocketing and so on and so forth. So, when Oliver goes there as this innocent soft boy, and then obviously as you know the text, what does Fagin do? He tries to capture, he tries to tame him, and he was trying to earn money by asking kids to go and beg or do pickpocketing or something by stealing, so on and so forth. And in that he was giving a shelter to these people, right? Food and so on and so forth. So, he does also with Oliver, and Oliver was very innocent, sweet, cute. So, people believe that if he does something, people will not believe that he has done something, right? But obviously, the clothes and all were not as sophisticated. But you know, in our society, we judge a person through his color, through his appearance, through his dress. Like this is how society is. And later on, what we see, and he goes there, and he doesn't know what he is doing. But some of his friends stole some money, pickpocketed, and then they did soft lifting. And in the name of soft lifting, when people identified, they started chasing him. Obviously, Oliver Twist could not understand what's happening, and then he also started running. People thought that, okay, he's the one who has done this. Why? He was looking poor boy and so on and so forth. So, here you see that. So, he's a boy and he's a poor, so he must have done this. So, poor boy, poor person is morally bad, disabled people are morally bad, they go together. That's a problem in our society, right? We judge a person with their appearance. We don't I don't want to get into the capitalism and all that, but the point what I'm making is that this is how. So, disabled people are considered as a morally deficient people, like sometimes they are considered hypersexual, they are considered as they are more jealous, so on and so forth, right? So, this is an interesting event that we need to examine when we are entering into disability studies, that how come disability has taken people with disability are considered as if they are morally deficient people, right? This is a very important way to question that. So, look at the next slide, please. By casting disabled people as a figure who must transcend their limitations or endure suffering heroically, these myths create unrealistic expectations that prevent people from recognizing disability as a naturally human conditions that require societal accommodations, not solely personal fortitude, right? So, reinterpreting myths can shift the focus from disability as a symbol of a karma or moral flaw to a celebration of diversity and resilience, right? For example, we have Ashtavakra, which I have been keeping more example, like Ashtavakra as a sage. his wisdom can be viewed not as an anomaly, right, but as an example of how intellectual and spiritual capacities are independent of physical form. So, by reinterpreting his story, we can frame his disability as an aspect of his identity that does not define his worth, right. So, now here you see that when we have an example like Astavakra, thus like any example that you see, and I have been keep on asking you to reinterpret that. Why I am asking you to reinterpret them? I am asking you to reinterpret them for a very basic, for a very basic reason, is that Astavakra gives an, like you can give an example of Astavakra and we say that, hey, look, he is also deformed, but he has a wisdom, right? So, they two are separate, and he cannot be considered morally deficient, right? He's a sage. He reached to a status where he has done something wonderful. So, being morally bad, developing criminal behavior, being sexually pervert, I don't know what this all mean, but just to explain this to you, right? This is how societies think about it. But even this has nothing to do with the body. It's just not because if someone is born deformed or born impaired, so it means that they will have morally, they cannot get wisdom, they cannot be a morally superior or morally nice person, right? So, we need to reinterpret them so that we can question this, so that we can challenge these notions. And that's why I have been asking you to reinterpret these things, right? So, look at the next slide, please. So, Dhritarashtra's blindness could be viewed not as a moral failing, but as a way to explore how disability intersect with leadership challenges, highlighting issue of accessibility and inclusion in governance. So, breaking the link between disability and karma, that is what our point is, right? We need to break the link, and that's why it's highlighted. So, redefining disability narrative in Indian myth can help break the link between disability and karmic punishment, right? So, first thing we have to dismantle this notion that disability and karmic punishment, disability is the result of karmic punishment, right? We have to challenge this. So, contemporary retellings can instead frame disabilities as a natural human variations rather than divine retributions. So, by presenting disabled character as a complex multidimensional figures who experience challenge and triumphs without being defined by their disability, reinterpretation can foster empathy and acceptance in society. So, modern Indian literature, when we go to cinema, when we go to art, when we go to that other form of writing, they have started to reinterpret myths and highlight disability issues, right? So, that's why I am asking you to look at it, right? Look at the another slide, please. Disability rights movement in India, they have begun advocating for more inclusive cultural narrative. So, this includes pushing for legislation like the Rights of Person with Disabilities, that is Act 2016, right? And if you have not read it, I would suggest you that please read this act. This is a very significant act, and there was an act that came in 1995 as well. So, please read that as well. So, this is emphasizing equality and accessibility, challenging myth-based stigmatization, right? Educators, scholars, storytellers, they all play a very crucial role in presenting disability through a progressive lens. Reinterpreting traditional stories in schools or popular media can help dismantle harmful stereotypes, promoting a cultural shift toward inclusion and respect. So, when we come to Indian myth, right, we have a rich and cultural significance that has shaped social attitudes toward disability for generations. So, traditional portrayals, they are often embed disability within the framework of morality and karmic consequence, limiting how people with disabilities are viewed in societies, right? So, and then only we can talk about cultural growth, right? So we have to reinterpret this myth in a way that respects disability as a part of human diversity, can support a more compassionate and inclusive society. So by breaking the chain of symbolism and exploring disabled characters as complex for individuals, myth can evolve to reflect the value of dignity, empathy, and respect. So as India's social landscape continue to evolve, embracing new interpretations of myth can ensure that cultural narratives support rather than hinder the progress toward equality for people with disabilities. So through these interpretations, we can continue to be a source of wisdom, but how with an understanding that every individual, regardless of physical or mental abilities, deserve respect and inclusion, right? So to conclude my lecture, now you saw that, you noticed that how even rights a person with disabilities that came in 1995 after we have 2000 onwards, they are also trying to reinterpret myths. That's why I picked up that one, right? You look at this, look at the slide, Right of Person with Disability Act 2016, right? So this act basically, when you see this act, Rights of Person with Disability Act 2016, they are also reinterpreting myths. I mean, policymakers, disabled activists, they all are indulged in doing this because they know until and unless they reinterpret myths, they indulge in talking about myths, it's not possible for them to come up with a new understanding, with providing this dignity to people with disabilities, to providing rights to people with disabilities. So this is why it is extremely significant and important to examine myths, to have a better consciousness, to circulate new consciousness about people with disability in our society. So with this, I would like to end my lecture. Thank you.